Oh, honey, pull up that rickety old rocker next to me here on the porch, the one that's seen more sunsets than I care to count. It's a quiet evening in Milford, Ohio, the kind where the crickets hum soft and the fireflies dance like lost souls, but tonight I ain't got the heart for stars or songs. No, sit close now, 'cause what I'm about to share starts with an ache so deep, it still wakes me some nights, breathing heavy like a ghost in the hall. You ever lost something so precious it hollowed you out, living just echoes where joy used to be? Well, that's my beginning, plain and raw as the frost on the fields back in 40. It was the tail end of World War II, the whole country holding its breath after all them years of telegrams and ration books. Folks in our little town were pinching hope from the papers, dreaming of boys coming home with medals and tall tales. Me, I was 37, standing in our cramped kitchen with the linoleum curling at the edges, stirring a pot of bean soup that stretched further than our budget ever did. The radio was crackling with news of peace. President Truman's voice booming about victory in Europe and now the Pacific folding too. I wiped my hands on my apron, smiling for the first time in months because my Tommy, my only boy, born with a whoop and a grin, and he chipped out at 18, full of fire and that boyish charm that turned heads at the county fair. Ma, he'd say, hugging me fierce before the bus took him away, "I'll bring you a coconut from some island paradise." Silly dreams, but they kept me going through the blackouts and the worry gnawing like a rat in the walls.
Henry, my husband, was out back fixing the fence, humming off-key to drown his own fears. Sarah, our little girl at 9, was drawing pictures of airplanes dropping candy instead of bombs, innocent as spring rain. The house smelled of fresh bread, my way of welcoming him home, and I set the table with our best china, the flowery plates Mama gave us when we wed. Time ticked slow that morning, the sun creeping up lazy over the cornstalks, birds chirping like nothing bad could touch us now. Then the knock came, sharp, official, like a judge's gavel. I opened the door to 2 fellas in stiff uniforms, hats in hand, faces carved from stone. "Mrs. Eleanor Hayes?" one asked, voice flat as Kansas. I nodded, heart already slipping, and he handed over that yellow envelope, the kind no mother wants to see. My fingers shook, tearing it open, the paper crinkling loud in the hush. "The Secretary of War regrets to inform you it started," words blurring as my eyes filled. "Tommy, killed on Iwo Jima, caught in the crossfire during the final push. Just 19, blown to bits on some godforsaken beach while we baked his welcome home. No coconut, no hugs, just a folded flag and a purple heart that felt like lead in my lap at the funeral." The town came, of course, women with casseroles, men muttering about sacrifice, but I barely heard 'em. Collapsed right there in the church pew, sobbing into Henry's shoulder, the world spinning black. That heartbreak? It wasn't a quick stab, it was a slow bleed, seeping into every corner of me, turning laughter to ash. Whirlers. Left mamas like me wandering empty nests, wondering why the stars and stripes couldn't shield our own. But wait, darlin', there's a twist in this tale that hit me harder than the loss itself, a secret Tommy carried to his grave, one that unraveled our family long before the bullets flew. You see, months before he left, he'd come to me one evening, eyes downcast, whispering about a girl from school, pregnant and scared, begging him to stay. He chose the draft anyway, leaving her alone with child, a half-sibling we never knew. That telegram? It buried not just my boy, but a whole unspoken truth that echoed through the years. If this is gripping your soul already, hit share now, pass it to a friend who's felt that hidden pain, because uncovering these stories heals us all a little. From there, life pulled me back to my roots, those depression days in 28 when the world first cracked underfoot. But even in the shadow of that terrible loss, my mind drifts back to where it all started, like a river finding its source. I was born Eleanor May Thompson on a sticky summer night in 1928, right in the heart of Milford, Ohio, a speck on the map where the fields rolled gold under the sun and the air always carried the scent of fresh-turned earth. The Great Depression was just a whisper then, but Pa said times were already lean, with banks calling in loans like hawks on a mouse. He was a sturdy man, broad as a barn door, who woke before dawn to wrestle the soil into submission, plow in rows that promised corn and beans if the rain cooperated. Mama, God rest her, was the glue, tiny but fierce, with hands that baked bread from nothing, and a voice that sang lullabies through the leanest winters. We lived in a clapboard house on the edge of town, 5 of us kids crammed like sardines, me the middle girl, with brothers Jed and Billy flanking me like bookends and sisters Rose and Lila sharing my bed on cold nights. Life back then was simple as a hymn, full of the kind of joys that money couldn't touch. Summers meant running wild from sunup, chasing each other through the alfalfa, our bare feet kicking up dust devils that swirled like magic. I'd climb the old oak by the creek with Ellie, my neighbor girl with freckles like cinnamon, and we'd pretend we were queens of the river, dipping toes in the cool water while minnows nipped at our heels. Pa taught us to fish with cane poles, baiting hooks with worms we dug from the garden, and oh, the pride when we hauled in a stringer full for supper. Moma'd fry 'em up golden with cornbread hot from the oven, and we'd eat on the porch till the stars pricked the sky. No radio or fancy toys, but we had stories. Pa spinning yarns about his pa fighting in the Great War, how America pulled through with grit and gumption. Those evenings with fireflies lighting our palms like captured sunshine felt like forever, warm, and unbreakable. Yet, even in that innocence, the world started showing its teeth. By 33, I was 5, and the Dust Bowl winds howled from the west, carrying grit that sifted through every crack in our walls. Pa's crops withered brown, leaving the fields barren as a widow's heart. Folks in Milford gathered at the general store, whispering about soup lines in the cities and banks foreclosing left and right. We ate thin, potato soup stretched with milk from the one cow that didn't dry up, and wild greens Mama foraged from the woods. I remember Jed, my big brother at 10, sneaking me an extra biscuit under the table, his eyes serious as a preacher's. "Don't tell Ma," he'd say, "we gotta stick together." That bond, it was our shield, teaching me early that family was the only fortune worth having. But honey, if these memories are warm in your heart amidst the ache, share 'em with someone dear. Let's remind each other of the simple lights that guide us through dark times. As the years ticked on, school became my window to bigger dreams. The one-room schoolhouse sat squat by the church with Miss Hargrove ringing the bell sharp at 8. I walked 2 miles each way, lunch pail swinging with an apple or nothing, learning my letters from primers worn thin by generations. Math was my favorite, numbers steady when the world wobbled, and I'd stay late, helping the teacher chalk the blackboard, dreaming of being a bookkeeper in Cleveland someday. Ellie and me, we'd pass notes folded like secrets, planning adventures, reading the rails like hobos in the papers, or dancing in speakeasies once we were grown. But reality nipped at our heels. In 36, when I was 8, Billy took sick with the whooping cough that swept the county, nights of him gasping by the stove, Mama rocking him with hot cloths on his chest. The doc came on horseback, shaking his head, and we buried little Billy under the family plot, his grave small as his laugh. That was my first taste of loss, sharp and unyielding, living a hole where his giggles used to be. Pa said the Lord had plans, but I saw the lines deepen on Mama's face, her hymns coming softer, sadder. The farm clung on by threads after that, Pa taking odd jobs hauling hay for richer neighbors, his back bending under the load. We kids pitched in, me milking the cow at dawn, my hands chopped raw, Rose and Lila weeding the garden till their fingers bled. Jed quit school at 12 to work the fields full-time, his boyish face hardened into a man's. Folks talked of Roosevelt's New Deal, them programs promising relief, but in Milford, it trickled slow, like molasses in January. One evening in 38, with the radio buzzing about war brewing in Europe again, Pa gathered us round the table, his voice grave. "America's got her troubles," he said, "but we'll weather it, like always, pulling bootstraps and praying hard." That resilience, it sank into me deep, a root in good soil. Yet whispers of change stirred in my teen heart. At 14, I started saving pennies from egg sales, hid 'em in a tin under my mattress for a future beyond the fences. Speaking of futures, that's when boys started noticing me, gangly limbs turn into curves, and dances at the Grange Hall calling like a siren song. Ellie and I dolled up in Mama's old dresses, pin and hair with ribbons scavenged from the attic. The fiddles wailed, feet stomped the floorboards, and I'd twirl till breathless, laughing under the lanterns. There was Jimmy Klein with his shy grin and farmer's build, stealing dances and promising the moon. But my heart tugged toward learning more, read in library books on history and far-off places when Miss Hargrove let me borrow extra. The world felt vast, pulling me, even as the Depression's grip loosened slow. In 41, Pearl Harbor hit like a thunderbolt, radio announcing the attack, Pa's face going pale as he tuned in. Jed signed up right away, 18 and eager, kissing Mama goodbye with stars in his eyes. "I'll be home before you miss me," he said, but we all knew better. That war shadow fell over our joys, turning dances to farewells, letters our only lifeline. And here's a peek in this early tale. Darlin, a secret from those formative days that shaped me more than I knew at the time. Turns out Pa had a hidden sorrow of his own. During the worst Dust Bowl year, he'd borrowed from a shady lender in town, signing over the deed in desperation to keep us fed. We lost the farm in '39, not to the bank, but to that debt, forced to pack up overnight and move to Auntie's drafty place in Indiana. I was 11, helping load the wagon with tears streaming, realizing Pa's strong hands couldn't always hold back the tide. That secret? He carried the shame silent, working as a hired man while we squeezed into 2 rooms, learning to share beds and dreams alike. It taught me shame's a heavy load, better shared, and in that cramped new home, we rebuilt, me fetching water from the pump, sisters sewing quilts from feed sacks. Ellie visited summers, bringing laughter that bridged the miles, and I threw myself into school, top of my class by 13, eyes on a scholarship that never came. Those Indiana years blurred into a mix of hardship and hope. The war ramping up with newsreels showing tanks and troops. Jed's letters came steady at first, full of camp life and keep the home fires burning. Mama pasted them in a scrapbook, read in aloud by the lamp. I turned 16 and 44, working after school at the diner, pouring coffee for soldiers passing through on trains. That's where I met Henry Hayes, tall, quiet, with a uniform crisp and eyes that held the road's weariness. He'd shipped back from basic, waiting for overseas orders, and we'd talk late shifts about home and horrors unspoken. One night, under the neon sign buzzing like fireflies, he asked me to the USO dance. I said yes, heart fluttering like a trapped bird, dancing to Glenn Miller tunes that drowned the war's roar. We married quick in '47, post-war boom lifting the country, thinking love could conquer any remnant storm. Tommy came soon after, my bundle of joy in a changing world, and Sarah followed, rounding out our nest. But even in that new chapter, echoes of early losses lingered. Jed never came home from Guadalcanal, lost at sea in '43. His death, a quiet bomb that shattered Mama for good. She faded slow after, passing in 50 from a heart worn thin. Those roots, darlin, the joys and jolts of youth, they planted the seeds of strength I'd need for the gales ahead. If this slice of my early days is stirring your own memories, go on and share the video. Let's connect these threads across generations, because knowing where we come from lights the path forward. Those first years with Henry and the little ones felt like a fresh start, like the country after the war, folks buying houses on the GI Bill, cars shining new on the highways, and hope hanging thick as summer air. We settled back in Milford, renting a modest bungalow with a white picket fence that Henry painted himself, his calloused hands steady for once. Tommy was a whirlwind at 2, toddling after the chickens in the yard, and Sarah cooed in her cradle, her tiny fists waving like she was conducting the world. I sewed curtains from flour sacks, turned them pretty with embroidery, and baked enough to fill the freezer, dreaming of PTA meetings and family suppers without a care. Henry drove a delivery truck for the local grocer, pulling in steady pay that let us afford a radio and Sunday drives to the lake. Life hummed along, simple and sweet, with church picnics where the band played America the Beautiful, and everyone sang like their hearts were full. But, honey, the calm never lasts long in my tale. The struggles crept in quiet, then roared like a twister. By '52, whispers of economic wobbles started circulating, factories laying off men as orders dried up from Korea. Henry came home one evening with his hat in hand, face drawn like old leather. "They cut my root," he said, slumping at the table while I served canned tuna and rice. We tightened belts, me mending clothes instead of buying new, the kids sharing toys till they wore thin. Tommy started school, coming home with stories of kids whose daddies worked steady, and I'd hug him close, whispering about how we'd make it sparkle again. Sarah picked wildflowers for the table, her 4-year-old smile a balm, but nights found me staring at the ceiling, tallying bills by moonlight. That was the first real strain, a slow squeeze that tested our vows, but we leaned on faith, saying grace extra long before meals. The real unraveling hit in '55, smacking the recession's jaws. Post-war boom fading fast, with President Eisenhower warning of inflation while families like ours pinched pennies till they bled. Henry's truck job vanished overnight, the grocer shutting down to half days. He picked up day labor at the mill, hauling scrap iron that bent his back crooked, coming home caked in grease and grouchy as a bear. Bills stacked like cordwood, doctor for Sarah's earache, shoes for Tommy growing like weeds. I took in washing from neighbors, my hands red and raw from the lye soap, hanging lines till my arms ached. One night with the kids asleep, Henry and I sat in the kitchen, the bulb flickering dim.
"We might lose the house,"
he muttered, and I felt that old depression fear rise, cold as well water. But we fought it, planting a victory garden like in the war days, trading eggs for milk, holding on to that American stubbornness that says you don't quit easy. If these hard times are echoing your own scrapes, darlin, share this story wide. Let's lift each other with the truth of how we endure. Speaking of endurance, the 50s blurred into 60s with kids stretching our seams in good ways. Tommy turned into a strapping lad, fixing bikes for pocket money and joining the Boy Scouts, earning badges that made my chest swell. Sarah blossomed too, with braids and a laugh that rang through the house, helping me can peaches from the tree out back. Henry found steadier work at the auto plant, assembly line humming with union pride, and we even afforded a black and white TV watching I Love Lucy till our sides hurt. But under the surface, cracks widened. Henry's long hauls meant late nights at bars with the boys, coming home smelling of beer and secrets. I'd lie awake, wondering if the road was stealing him bit by bit, but I pushed it down for the family's sake, serving breakfast with a smile and praying for glue to hold us. Then Vietnam loomed, that far-off war sucking the air from our dreams. By 65, the draft lottery had folks sweating, and Tommy, at 19 now, drew a low number, fate's cruel dice. He was in college part-time, studying mechanics, but the call came swift, basic training in the spring. I sewed his duffel, stitching love into every seam, and we drove him to the bus station under a gray sky, the whole town waving flags like it was a parade. Right every week, son? Henry said, voice thick, clapping his shoulder hard. Sarah, 15 and fierce, slipped him a locket with our pictures. His letters started hopeful. Boot camp drills, buddies joking about home. But as the jungle swallowed him, words grew sparse, edged with fear. Ma, the heat's like hell and the nights never end. Protests raged on TV, kids burning cards in the streets. But in Milford, we tied yellow ribbons on mailboxes, waiting for our boys to beat the odds. The peak of that agony crashed in 68. Tommy's death hit in like a bomb in our quiet kitchen. That telegram again, the one that haunted me from World War II, slipping under the door while I kneaded dough for his favorite pie. Killed in action, Quang Tri Province, it read. Minefield taken him and 2 others in the dead of night. I crumpled, howling till the neighbors came running, Henry holding me like I'd shatter. The funeral was a blur of taps on a bugle, folded flag on the casket, and Milford mourning another Gold Star boy. Sarah sobbed through the nights, blaming the government, while Henry retreated to the garage, hammering shadows. That loss hollowed us, leaving a silence heavier than grief. Tommy's room untouched, his comics gathering dust, a ghost in every corner. Vietnam stole more than lives. It fractured families, leaving mamas like me, wondering if peace was just another lie. From that pit, we clawed slow, but new blows fell. Sarah, rebelling at 17 and 69, dyed her hair wild and ran with the counterculture crowd. Peace rallies turned into parties, boys with beads and bad ideas. She dropped out of school, sneaking off to Cincinnati for concerts, coming home with stories of Woodstock that chilled my blood. Henry and I argued fierce, him yelling about discipline, me pleading for understanding in this changing world. Then in 70, she vanished for weeks, only a postcard from Haight-Ashbury saying she was finding herself. Panic gripped me, driving to the city with nothing but a prayer, tracking her to a crash pad reeking of smoke and regret. She was thin, eyes hollow, talking about free love like it was salvation. I brought her home, arms around her waist, but the rift lingered, a secret shame she carried alone. Honey, if this mother's worry tugs at you, pause and share. Spread these warnings so no one walks that lonely road blind. The 70s piled on like a bad debt, recession striking in 73 with oil embargoes and lines at the pump stretching for miles. Henry lost the plant job to automation, robots taking what men built with sweat. We sold the TV, pawned Mama's brooch, and moved to a cheaper rental, walls paper thin and heat spotty. Sarah, back on track at 18, waiting tables at the diner, but then the news dropped, pregnant by a drifter who skipped town, leaving her crying in my arms. I held her through the morning sickness, knitting booties from yarn scraps, but the bills for prenatal care mounted like mountains. Little Tommy Jr. arrived in 74, a squalling bundle with Sarah's eyes, and oh, he lit a spark in our dim house, his gurgles pulling us from the edge. But the economy ground us finer, unemployment checks, dwindling, food stamps, a last resort we swallowed pride for. Henry took to drink heavier nights at the VFW hall, swapping war stories that turned bitter, coming home swaying with ghosts of his own. That drinking hid deeper rot, and by 76, the recession's trough exposed it. Henry confessed one sloppy evening, slurring about a woman in Toledo from his trucking days. A fair that bore fruit, a daughter named Lila, now 12 and livin' with her ma on welfare. He'd slipped money when he could, lies peelin' like unpaid rent, but never told me till the guilt boiled over. Rage hit me like a slap, packin' a bag, stormin' out to Auntie's old place, levin' him with the baby and his shame. Walked those dusty roads alone, heart-poundin' betrayal, wonderin' how love turned so sour. Days blurred in that empty house, memories of Tommy mockin' me, Sarah callin' worried, but resilience whispered, hate don't feed babies or mend breaks. I returned not for him, but for the family we'd forged through wars and wants, the American way, patching quilts from ragged pieces. Another peak crusted in 78, when Sarah's world cracked wide. Her boyfriend, a decent fella from the mill, proposed proper, but then the layoff wave hit, 78 recession echoing the 70s, factories shutterin' as Carter fought stagflation. They lost their apartment, moving back with us temporarily, Tommy Jr. toddling through our crowded space. Tension snapped. Henry snapping at the noise, Sarah defending her man, me playing referee with a weary smile. One night, a fire started in the kitchen, grease from frying pork chops, flames licking the curtains while we slept. I woke to smoke, grabbing the baby and yelling alarms, Henry beating the blaze with blankets till the fire truck wailed in. We escaped with singed brows and a ruined stove, but the scare shook us deep, a metaphor for our burning lives. Neighbors rallied with clothes and meals, reminding me of depression potlucks, and we rebuilt stronger. Henry quitting the bottle cold, joining NA, Sarah and her man finding work at a cannery. The 80s didn't let up, Reagan's morning in America not dawning for blue-collar towns like ours. Inflation cooled, but jobs stayed scarce, Henry driving cab at odd hours, me cleaning houses for cash under the table. Lila, that secret daughter, reached out tentative in 82, a letter postmarked Toledo, shy words about wanting to know her roots. I met her at a diner halfway, seeing Henry's nose and my own wary eyes in her face, 16 and toughened by her ma's struggles. We talked awkward over pie, sharin' nothing but blood at first, but it cracked the wall of secrets, planting a seed of what could be. Sarah's family grew too, another baby, a girl we called Rose after my sister, and we squeezed 'em all in, laughter mixin' with the creak of floorboards. But poverty nipped constant, evictions loomed twice, welfare forms humilin'. Yet community held us, church drives, union halls offering leads, that World War II spirit of togetherness rising again. Final peak in these dark years came in 85, the recession's tail end grinding farms and factories to dust. Henry's cab broke down, leaving us stranded, and Sarah's husband walked out sudden, taking the car and half our hope. She collapsed in tears, baby Rose wailing, while I rocked them both, whispering about my own early losses to show the way through. Lila showed up then, driving from Toledo with groceries and a hug, her ma passing recent from cancer, leaving her adrift. We formed a makeshift tribe, women holding the fort while men faltered, scraping by on my Sewin and Lila's waitress tips, bartering for rent. That betrayal and bond, it forged unbreakable ties, teaching that struggles strip us bare but reveal the gold underneath, like panning creeks and gold rush tales. Through it all, darlin', we kept our heads up, drawing from the well of American resilience. Wars and recessions testin' but not breaking the heart of folks like us. If these battles mirror yours, share this far and wide, together we turn pain to power. Those struggle years, they left us scarred but not surrendered, like a field after flood, muddy and weary, but ready for the plow come spring. By the late 80s, with Reagan's terms winding down and the economy hinting at turnaround, we started seeing glimmers of light peek through the cracks. Henry, sober now for years after that fire scare, woke him proper, took a night shift at the warehouse, stacking crates with a steadiness I'd almost forgotten. Me, I kept the home fires tending, sewing dresses for the grandkids and volunteering at the church soup kitchen, where faces familiar from the mill lines shared stories over bowls of stew. Sarah and her fella, let's call him Mike, the mechanic with grease under his nails and a heart of gold, patched things up after his walkout, him apologizing with a ring and a promise to stick through thick. Lila, that secret sister from Toledo, became a regular, driving over Sundays with her sharp wit and a pie that rivaled mine, slowly weaving herself into our tangled web. Little Tommy Jr., at 12 now, helped with chores, his chatter filling the voids Tommy Sr. left, while baby Rose toddled after, her curls bouncing like hope itself. The first real heal came quiet in 87 when Mike's shop got a loan from the small business program, something like Carter's community folks pushing for blue-collar rebounds after the recession blues. He fixed up the garage, hearing on a couple locals, and suddenly Sarah wasn't waiting tables no more. She ran the books, her head for numbers, straight from my school days. We celebrated with a backyard barbecue, the whole kin. Henry grillin' burgers, Lila teaching Rose to skip stones in the creek, me snapping beans with a laugh that felt foreign but welcome. It wasn't riches, just enough to pay the mortgage on a bigger place we bought in '88, a 2-story with room for everyone to breathe. That move? It washed away the trailer ghosts, letting us unpack not just boxes, but burdens too. Henry hung Tommy's Purple Heart on the wall, first time in years, and we talked about him open, no tears hid. Forgiveness crept in slow for his wanderings, replaced by pride in the man he'd become. Flawed, but fightin'. But honey, resolution ain't a straight road, it winds with peaks that test the turn. One such crest hit in '89, just as the Berlin Wall crumbled on the news, and America cheered a new world order. Lila showed up unannounced one rainy afternoon, her face pale as milk, clutching a doctor's note, cancer stage 2, the kind that sneaks up on women our age. She'd been hiding pains, working double at the factory to send money home, but the lump in her breast wouldn't lie no more. We rallied like in the war days, Sarah driving her to Cleveland for treatments, me packing care baskets with quilts and broth, Henry fixing her old Chevy so she wouldn't miss a chemo run. Nights at the hospital, we'd huddle in the waiting room, sharing stories, her ma's hard life mirroring mine, the secrets Henry sowed now blooming into bond. Lila fought fierce, losing hair but not spirit, and by Christmas, the docs said remission. We cried in the kitchen over eggnog, hugging tight, that victory a balm on old wounds. It mended what the recessions tore, showing family ain't blood alone, but choice, pulling together like the country after Vietnam scars, rebuilding on community grit. If this comeback's stirring your fighter spirit, darlin, share it now. Let's inspire folks to grab hold of their own resolutions, one hug at a time. The '90s brought more steady ground, the economy booming with computers and malls spurting everywhere, but in Milford, it was small wins that healed deepest. Tommy Jr. grew tall and joined the Army in '92, post-Gulf War calm, making it seem safer than Vietnam's hell. He shipped to bases in Germany, sending postcards of castles and beers, coming home on leave with stories that made us laugh instead of weep. Sarah's Bakery opened in '94, a cozy spot on Main Street with gingham curtains and the smell of cinnamon wafting out, pies like mine, but with her twists, apple with cheddar or cherry bourbon. Mike helped build the counters, Lila decorated the shelves, and I minded the counter part-time, chatting with old-timers about how far we'd come since the oil shocks. Grandkids multiplied. Rose had a boy in '95, calling him Jed after my brother, and Tommy Jr. brought a sweetheart home, planning a wedding that filled the church with joy. Henry, grain but spry, walked the aisles with me, his hand warm in mine. The betrayals faded to footnotes in our long book. Yet another peak rose in '96, testing our men's with a flood that summer, Ohio River swelling from heavy rains, echoing the great flood of '37 from my girlhood tales. Waters rose fast, creeping into basements and washing out bridges, the recession-era infrastructure crumbling under the strain. Our house sat high, but Sarah's bakery flooded knee-deep, ovens ruined and flour sacks bloated like drowned rats. We waded in with buckets, Henry sloshing beside Mike, Lila hauling what she could salvage. The town turned out like World War II scrap drives, neighbors sandbagging, National Guard trucks hauling supplies, folks from the city sending aid after the news hit. It took weeks, but we rebuilt stronger, higher shelves, new drains, and a community fund that covered losses. That disaster? It bonded us tighter, forgiveness flowing free as the receding waters. Henry apologizing deep to Lila for the years lost, her waving it off with a grin. We're here now, ain't we? It mirrored America's post-Cold War heel, dusting off and dreaming big again, resilience rising from the muck. By the new millennium, life settled into a rhythm warm as fresh laundry. Henry retired in 2000, drawing a pension that let us travel a bit, drives to the Smokies, where the hills reminded me of home. Tommy Jr. settled nearby with kids of his own, coaching Little League like his uncle might have, while Sarah's bakery thrived, franchising to a couple towns over. Lila moved closer in '02, buying a place next door after her second scare stayed clear, and we gardened together, sharing seeds and secrets like sisters long denied. The grandkids gathered Sundays, filling the porch with noise, barbecues where stories spun of wars won and recessions beat, teaching them that heartbreaks build character, not chains. I watched Henry age graceful, his hand in mine at the county fair, riding the Ferris wheel like young lovers, The world spins meaningless with love holding steady. One last peek in this rise in art came in 2005 when Henry took ill heart trouble from years of hard labor and harder hide-in. The doc said bypass, nothing fancy, but the waiting room vigil hit like old losses revived. We circled again, Sarah canceling shifts, Mike fixing the hospital chair that squeaked, Lila reading psalms soft, Tommy Jr. flying in from his post. Surgery went smooth, and when he woke grinning weak, told ya I'd outlast the bastards, we laughed through tears, the room alive with relief. That scare sealed our forgiveness full, no more unspoken grudges, just gratitude for the days we had. It echoed the nation's rebound after 9/11, pulling together in grief turned to grit, families like ours standing tall against the tempests. Through these resolutions, darlin, we found that heal ain't about forgetting the storms, but dancing in the sun that follows. American spirit at its core, resilient and reaching. And now, as the sun dips low over this familiar Ohio horizon, painting the sky in hues of peach and gold, like one of Sarah's famous sunset's pies, I find myself reflecting on the long road that's brought me here at 87. This porch swing creaks under me gentle, a witness to more chapters than most folks could fill a book with. And honey, if there's one thing these years have etched deep in my bones, it's that life ain't a straight shot from cradle to grave. It's a patchwork quilt stitched with tears and triumphs, secrets and salvations. I've seen America rise and buckle under wars that tore families asunder, recessions that ground hopes to dust, and betrayals that cut sharper than any knife. Yet here I am, breathing easy, heart full of gratitude for the resilience that carried us through. Those heartbreaks from Tommy's telegram in 45 to Henry's confessions in the 70s, they didn't break me. They built me, layer by layer, into this old woman who knows joy comes not from avoiding the storms, but from learning to dance in the rain. Look back with me, darlin, to the core of it all, the lessons woven through every twist. First off, family, blood, or chosen, it's the anchor in rough seas. Oh, how I learned that the hard way, losing my brother Jed to the Pacific waves, then my boy Tommy to Vietnam's jungles, each goodbye a rip in the fabric. But then came Lila, that hidden daughter of Henry's, stepping into our circle shy as a fawn, and with her came a widening of the heart. We weren't perfect. Secrets like her existence festered for years, breeding resentment and quiet nights of wondering what ifs. Yet forgiveness, that's the thread that mends tightest. In 89, during her cancer fight, when we huddled in that hospital glow, sharing coffee from a thermos and prayers from the heart, I let go of the anger at Henry for his wanderings. He was there too, holding her hand, tears tracking down his weathered cheeks, and in that moment, the past dissolved like morning mist. It's the American way, forgiving not because it's easy, but because holding grudges is like drinking poison and waiting for the other fella to die. We've seen it nationally. After World War II's scars, folks rebuilt neighborhoods block by block. Post-Vietnam, vets found peace in each other's stories at the wall. My family did the same, turning private pains into shared strength, proving that love, once cracked, can heal stronger. If these truths are resonating in your soul, folks, do share this video, pass on the wisdom so it ripples out, touching lives like a gentle wave. Another lesson that stands tall in my reflections is the power of grit, that unyielding spirit small-town America embodies, forged in the fires of hardship. Remember the depression days of my youth, when Pa lost the farm to shady debts and we packed up under cover of night, squeezing into Auntie's Indiana rooms, or the 73 recession, with gas lines snake dancing and Henry drinking to drown the layoff blues. Those times stripped us bare, leaving us to forage wild greens and pawn heirlooms just to eat. I recall the fire in 78, flames dancing wild in the kitchen while the baby wailed, and how we beat it back with nothing but blankets and bare hands. No government bailout or fairy godmother, just neighbors knocking with pots of chili and spare change, echoing the WWII victory gardens where folks shared seeds and sweat to outlast the Axis. Resilience ain't flashy, it's the choice to rise after the fall, like Sarah did after her drifter left her pregnant and penniless. She poured that hurt into her bakery, kneading dough till dawn, and turned it into a cornerstone of Milford where now grandkids learn the trade, smelling cinnamon and hearing tales of how Grandma Sarah wouldn't quit. It's the same backbone that pulled our country through the 80s slump. Reagan's tax cuts trickling down to factories humming again. But really, it was the people, workers like Mike fixing engines, moms like me sewing seams, who made the rebound real. Speaking of the bigger picture, reflecting on America's journey mirrors my own in ways that humble me. We've weathered tempests together, the Great Depression teaching us thrift and togetherness, WWII testing our valor with gold stars in every window, Vietnam dividing us but ultimately uniting in remembrance. Then the recessions, 55's dip, 73's oil crisis, the 80's inflation wars, they ground us down. But look what sprouted. Innovation in garages led into silicon booms, communities banded like barn raisins to lift the fallen. My struggles weren't unique. They were threads in the national tapestry. When the 96 flood swallowed Sarah's shop, waters rising fierce as my girlhood floods, it wasn't just our family shoveling muck. It was the whole town, National Guard trucks rumbling in, reminding me of how FDR's New Deal dug us out of the 30s despair. And post 9/11, when fear gripped the airwaves, we pulled closer, much like after Pearl Harbor, sure in flags and fortitude. These events shaped not just policy, but souls, teaching that hope is a verb, an action we choose daily. In my life, that meant planting gardens in trailer yards, bartering pies for rent, and telling stories to grandkids so they know the roots run deep. It's why, even now, with the world whirring faster than my old wringer washer, I hold faith in that enduring dream. Land of opportunity, where a grandma from Ohio can spin yarns that maybe, just maybe, light a spark in some young heart. But, oh, the peak of all this pondering crests here, darlin, in the profound truth I've come to cherish most. Hope ain't blind optimism, it's the quiet fire that warms through the coldest nights. I've lost so much, Pa's farm, Jed and Tommy to war's cruel hands. Henry's fidelity shattered like cheap china, even Mama's light fading too soon. Secrets piled high, the hidden pregnancy Tommy left behind, that telegram's unspoken half-sibling we discovered years later, Lila's very existence a bomb in our nest, each one a peak of pain, valleys where despair whispered to give up. Yet resilience bloomed unexpected. In the 89 remission party, eggnog toasts amid chemo's shadow, in the millennium wedding of Tommy Jr., vows echoing the ones Henry and I renewed after his heart surgery in '05. Hope showed up in small graces, the grandkids' laughter drowned in old griefs, Sarah's bakery scent wafting like prayers answered, Lila's garden blooming next door with flowers named for our lost ones. Nationally, it's the same. After Vietnam's divide, we built memorials of marble that heal divisions. Through recession's grind, entrepreneurs rose from ashes, turning layoffs into legacies like Steve Jobs in his garage. My hope? It's learned, earned through tears, believing that every tragedy plants a seed of growth, that secrets shared lighten the load, that family and community are the true wealth no economy can tax away. At 87, with Henry gone a decade now, but his smile in every sunset, I see it clear. Life's not about dodging the blows, but rising with grace, carring a little deeper, loving a bit fiercer. Tie it all together, and what emerges is a tapestry of endurance, folksy and fierce, small town strong. From depression dust to digital dawns, my path parallels this great land's wars winning freedoms we cherish, busts birth and innovations we rely on, secrets surface into strengthen bonds. I've reflected on joys too, barn dances with Ellie, fireflies in jars, grandbabies' hugs that melt time. Tragedies built character, resilience the mortar holding it firm. For the young ones watching, carry this, face your storms head on, forgive freely, hope relentlessly. We've proven it, America and I, through it all. We keep swinging on this porch, telling tales that say we're tougher than we know. So, as the stars wink on, like old friends, I leave you with this. From a grandma's heart to yours, if my stories moved you, stirred those hidden places, go ahead and share it wide. Tell your kin, your neighbors, the stranger down the street, because sharing these reflections ain't just words. It's passing the torch of hope, reminding us all that in the end, resilience wins, and the American dream lives in every heartbeat. God bless you, and thank you for sitting with me a spell. Until next time, keep the faith.